We have to get federal spending under control. The fact that Joe Biden was out there yesterday on Labor Day touting that he's reduced the deficit while he's doubled the deficit from one year to the next is, outrageous lie on his part. The fact is that spending has never been worse.
And joining us now with what he's watching as we inch closer, Mike Allen, co-founder of Axios. I was talking about the Axios party. Who was your partner? They must have really had it going on down there. Who was your partner to throw that party?
It was a great party. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, but someone knew what was going on to throw an unbelievable party, and I can't imagine it was you and Axios, was it? Who was your partner?
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
You're the future Malta bureau chief. So.
Okay, yes. Exactly. All right, here's where we are. And I had Jared Bernstein on yesterday. And Jared came on and he was talking about bottoms out, bottoms up, tops down, build it out from the... One out of three Americans think that the economy is going well or that Biden's doing a good job. He continues to just ignore that and say, I'm reducing the deficit, I added X amount, I've done this and I've done that. Americans really aren't buying it. Do you detect that at Axios?
They are. That's the problem. Part of it is housing prices, and a couple things that I can tell you the White House is really worried about is, one, an auto strike, which I can tell you both sides tell me they think it's more likely than not when the UAW contract expires September 14th. Nathan Bomey, who covers autos for us, says the big question is, do they pick one of the big three or do they go against all three of the big three? In any case, like a big problem for the administration. Second, more and more concerns about a government shutdown, obviously also ripple effects for the economy. Axios has a scoop up this morning from Julie Grace Brefke on Capitol Hill saying that Speaker McCarthy has a lot of mines that he's going to have to dodge if he's going to keep the gavel. What does that mean? That means a shutdown's more likely because, of course, he needs to worry about his right flank. It's going to be harder for him to make a deal with President Biden or Senate Democrats.
You're totally down in the weeds. Let's talk big picture here. How the hell...
Shutting down the government's not the weeds.
Yeah, it's kind of the weeds. When you talk about where...
Not as big.
Okay, here's where we are. We've got someone that I don't know whether it's the Dems are pushing for Donald Trump, but you've got someone who... Partisan, what are you doing?
I'm listening.
Partisan Republicans, obviously, primary voters are going to back him. Much less clear whether overall he can win a general election. And you've got another person that most Democrats think is too old to run. How did we get here? When are we going to get back to having two candidates that both people say I could live with either one? We've got, right now, most people saying I can't live with either. Why? Why are we here?
No, it's true, the rerun. And what's fascinating is my conversations behind the scenes, like both sides, very confident. You talk to the West Wing, they go in and Democrats are warning them things aren't as good as you think. And they say, like, Trump craziness plus the abortion issue, they feel very confident based on that.
It's just then it's a default to someone that thinks is way too old and probably can't live out effectively govern for another 4 years, starting 2 years from now.
No, I can tell you.
You think he's going to be the nominee? You don't think that as we get closer that he doesn't want to admit it now because he would be a lame duck, but you don't think he's getting pressured from Democrats to...
That's two different questions. So one, there's zero sign of that. But second, of course, like Democrats are, of course, antsy behind the scenes about this. Like there's a lot of people I think wish that they had started sooner. It's too late for someone to take him on. But they recognize that there's real issues here, and that's why...
Isn't Vice President Harris, right or wrong, is probably one of the least popular vice presidents that we've had.
Well, and of course,
everyone realizes it's a breath away from being in the White House in the second term, right?
The White House is being very intentional about repositioning her, giving her more of a profile, because they know a lot of the campaign is going to be about her. Republicans are going to say, based on actuarial tables, if you're voting for President Biden, you're voting for Vice President Harris.
You want to bring it back to the weeds? You can bring it back.
By the way, Andrew, I'm wearing your ring, thanks to you.
Okay.
How'd you sleep last night?
How'd you sleep last night?
Very well.
Nervous about coming on?
80.
Here's where I want to go.
And by the way, Live Nation put on that great party. So
Did
thanks.
you forget?
That was a great
That's
part.
what you were texting. That's what you were figuring out.
I was actually going to mention Live Nation. I thought maybe you didn't want to mention it. Okay.
Oh, I thought you couldn't mention it.
Because this is a business network, I want to talk Moneyball with you. In terms of the politics of which GOP candidates you think actually have real money that will keep them in this race for longer, which is to say DeSantis clearly has the most right now. You have Vivek out there who's got, I think he's loaned his own, he's loaned his campaign a bunch of money. Nikki Haley's now gotten a bit of money out of after this last debate. But how do you see that? And then how do you see that on a relative basis to where the president is?
Yeah, so the president and Axios had a scoop yesterday that we're going to see a big ad on his economic record Thursday in all the swing states as the NFL kicks off. On the Republican side, it's just like in polling. It's President Trump, former President Trump, and everyone else. Nikki Haley, I'm told from both sides, from both coasts, after the debate, got a lot of calls from people who said, I want to do an event for you. Republicans who liked the sort of practical way that she talked about abortion. I can tell you there were a lot of Democrats who watched her in the debate and said, if somehow she were the opponent against Trump, against Biden, that would be very difficult to take on. So a lot of conversation about her, a lot of conversation about Senator Tim Scott, who has a lot in the bank, has a PAC that has been spending more. I think he's the sort of third biggest on TV after Biden and Trump.
After this next debate, we just showed you that big list. How does that shake down? Meaning, do you think you get down to 6 candidates? Do you get down to 3? Just in terms of a calendar and everything else. And this goes to the money issue.
Yeah, a fascinating part of that calculus is what Trump needs is a lot. Trump wants them to stay in. The more that it's a split field, the better off he is. He knows that really the only way at this point that he could lose New Hampshire would be if there were one candidate that people were coalescing, and there's no sign of that, no movement in that direction, and no real incentive for anyone on that list to drop out.
I was going to say nobody has to drop out at this point, do they? But to Andrew's point, the money will eventually be an issue. How and when? When does the money become a factor that you start knocking people out? Right.
After the first couple states, when you need to run in multiple states at once, of course, that gets very expensive. But in those first couple states, as you know, and I've been in those states with all of you, the coverage can carry you for a long time. And people in the state want a race, like the media's happy to cover a race.
Is it productive to talk about anyone other than Trump?
Okay, does Trump
He's
ever
at
do
60%
but does he ever do a debate?
The primary voters
does
now.
Does he ever do a debate?
He would do a
And
debate if it got down to someone who could threaten him. But right now,
will that happen?
Right now, no incentive to do it.
Where do you put the odds of him being the nominee? Right? Isn't it 80%?
Of course, plus and
80% plus.
Of course, and taking your something dramatic would have to change. Lightning would have to hit this race,
like an indictment,
for something else to happen. Well, of course, Trump says indict me one more time, then I've clinched it.
Okay,
exactly.
Thus far, the view is so. Let's say it's Trump Biden. What do you think the business community does? Meaning, right now, the business community has been relatively quiet about everything because it's not been in their favor to do so. But privately, you talk to a lot of these folks too. We talk to them. What do you think actually happens? Do you think that they say nothing? They take no positions in any of this? If it actually gets down to it, do you think that they actually stand up and say, we don't like this, but we're doing this? What? Nothing.
Well, like them standing out, like it would be no help in a Republican primary, right? And I think what
once you get past the primary,
I'd be interested in what you're hearing. I think you're going to have a lot of business people who voted Republican all their life who vote for President Biden. Like, what do you hear?
That's what I'm hearing. But I think there's a question mark about whether they'd actually say it out loud. Some of them, I think, would want to.
I think it's going to be more quiet than out loud.
There's others that say they want to return to the policies of the Trump administration, but it would come with all the baggage.
But I have a reality check for them, and that is they can vote quietly. The party's not changing. The party's not flipping back. People think it'll switch back today in New Hampshire. Vice President Pence giving a speech. We have a preview on Axios this morning where he's going to talk about conservatism versus populism. And he's talking about a more Reagan-esque, George W. Bush Republican Party. Like the data show it, the polls show it, that is not where the GOP is right now.
And just the idea that it could be like Jeb Bush was a front runner, but he obviously wasn't. That there's anything analogous to where Trump is and to where previous elections where someone comes out of nowhere, it just doesn't seem possible. It doesn't seem like anyone could catch fire. Maybe DeSantis at one point, but what's happened over the last 3 months?
Yeah, Nate Cohn at the Times, who's the best on this, has said that Trump's, the consistency, the distance, like no one's ever overcome that.
That's why when we talk about who's going to drop out, who's next, it's like it seems like a moot point.
Yeah, no, Kellyanne Conway had the word. She called the last debate the undercard, and that's the problem is when you have a debate when the most relevant person ain't on the stage.
Yeah. Mike, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.